Alright everyone, time for a little bit more of a bitter video, which is that Trump could literally, there's nothing that he can do at this point to convince people that he's not a racist, and it's really funny because he's never actually done anything racist. CNN now, take this with a grain of salt, because it's CNN reporting on this, doing polling. I think it was a CNN poll about Americans' opinion of whether Trump was a racist or not. And they compared him unfavorably with Hubert Humphrey, if you can believe that. You know, he was segregation now, segregation forever, I think, is the dude that they're comparing him with. And it doesn't make any sense because, again, you can go back 20 years and you can see pictures and news stories and video reels and stuff like that of Donald Trump, you know, elbow to elbow with Al Sharpton and shit like that, getting awards. Desegregating things deliberately, like the Mar-a-Lago, which was unique at the time. And supposedly he has this like deep, bitter hatred of minorities, so-called. The thing is that this just shows that even though the propaganda apparatus of the lamestream is dying out, like it's losing steam. It's clearly the CNNs and MSNBCs are dying. Nobody trusts them anymore. They still do have a remnant power, unfortunately, at this time. These for-profit, multinational, billion-dollar corporations have amalgamated together in order to create an alternative reality that they simply push over and over and over, day in and day out, until people passively accept it. Part of that is to get them to passively accept the fact, which is not a fact at all, that Donald Trump is a bigot. But the thing is, they can't even point out a single example in which he has legitimately done or said anything bigoted. When you see these, like, memes, poorly made usually, by the left, they say, well, here's a list of racist things Trump has done. All of the things there are debunked. I made a video on this topic, like, with this, the concept of the so-called Muslim ban. Never existed. There's no such thing. There never was any such thing. No such thing was ever actually created. There was never a ban on Muslims entering the United States. There was a ban on individuals, regardless of their religion. By the way, Islam not even being a race, so I'm not sure what's racist about it. Maybe bigoted, you could say. Xenophobic. That has nothing to do with race. There was a ban on individuals from certain countries from coming in. That wasn't most of the Islamic world. Not most of the world's Islamic population. Blocked some non-Muslims from entering too, like Coptic Christians, Alawites, people like that. People who are Jewish minority in some of these countries, such as Zoroastrians and shit like that. They're not allowed to enter the United States either, even as tourists, under that ban, and it wasn't even a permanent ban. The idea that it had anything to do with targeting Islam was kind of funny, amusing. Unfortunately, the thing is that lie was told so often that it became entrenched in people's minds. Now, there is another situation that's sort of like them convincing people Trump's a racist. Look at the tax reform bill. The tax reform bill has been shown. It is objectively true that it saved the majority of Americans money. Most of those that weren't saved money didn't really pay any more anyway, unless they're fundamentally, and this is the funny part, rich, or they're getting their money from a handful of sources. Like, I think, like, the dividend class, I think, if I remember correctly. Certain people, and Chris Whalen pointed this out, people who formerly could get their companies to, like, compensate them for, ran a roundabout way for travel and things like that. Like, they lost some of their deductions, and so they had to renegotiate contracts. Which definitely, that's blue-collar work. It's typically working or lower middle class. That did hurt, hundreds of thousands of people. But nobody's even talking about that. They just say, well, where's my tax cut? I had to pay more at the end of the year. I didn't get as much of a tax return. Yes, you didn't get as much of a return because you didn't pay as much into the system because the tax rate was lower. That's the way it fucking works. You're not really paying taxes anyway. You're getting a return covering that and more. Your return was less. Oh my goodness. You shouldn't be living tax return to tax return anyway. What the fuck is wrong with you? There's some people, they get into a situation. They got dead or something. They got kicked out of a higher level job. Now they're flipping burgers and they're wondering how this lower class system works. I can sort of understand that, but if someone knows how that game operates and they're not able to make ends meet, I feel sorry for them if the economy's let them down, but in some cases, the economy hasn't let them down and they're just doing the wrong thing. They're expecting to get like all this money at the end of the year, and this is how I pay off my debt. It's a crazy idea. You should try something different because the government is not responsible for your actions. By government, I mean tax money being disbursed from other taxpayers, people like me. I have nothing but sympathy for the lower class because it's been largely created by the government anyway, but if you're going to be part of that class, There are steps you can take to try to ameliorate the economic problems that we have. Trump has not made them worse. Trump saved me thousands of dollars. And now that the ACA mandate is going away, that'll be a significant amount less that people pay. Not saying I won't get health insurance. At some point you have to. You get older, and things start to break down. I know. I'm trying to be prepared. But generally, like someone's like 25 years old or something, they're not exactly thinking of maybe anything other than catastrophic or basic dental. They're like, why am I going to pay $400 or $500 a month for care I'm really not using? It's the equivalent of paying like what, $5,000 a year to visit the doctor a couple of times. Fuck that shit. And so they say, no, I'd rather take that money, pocket it, invest it, make the money grow, invest in something, make the money work, pay off debt or something, and then maybe when I'm 30, 35, then I'll start thinking about that healthcare. Didn't really get the option to do that because the ACA mandate would take that money back from them. It was a way of the government, in a roundabout manner, forcing people to pay for other people's stuff. But Trump could pretty much do anything and still get labeled a racist, just as he could pretty much do anything, and there would still be deluded people who think that he cost them money and that his his tax reform system somehow was a throw money to the rich trickle-down system. It wasn't. It was mainly targeted at the working class, middle class, and upper middle class. The core of America, that half or 60% of people that fall somewhere in that general area. It's not aimed at the poor who don't pay anything. There's no way to make them pay less than zero. It's not aimed at the rich. Disproportionately, yes, they're going to get a larger cut as an absolute number, but if you look at the ratio, their ratio of savings is considerably lower. The ratio of savings is highest if you're in the middle income bracket, if you're somewhere around median to double median income. That's the sweet spot that most of the relief went to. And it worked. It's been boosting growth in the economy. He just got an interest rate cut. It'll be interesting to see what that does. Probably boost growth back up. By the way, people saying, oh, it's economic Armageddon, it's the first time in 10 years that this has happened. Trump didn't want them to raise the interest rate to begin with because there was no legitimate reason for them to do that other than to slow growth down. He's saying, hey, keep the lending going, keep the growth growing, keep the advancing going. Things are already working. Why are you trying to change it? It doesn't make any sense. I support the move. Even more, I support auditing the Fed, but we'll get into that another time, I suppose. Trump will be called a racist no matter what he does, though, and it's the majority of Americans think he's racist. Here's the interesting part, though. Look at the number of people who think that he's a racist and then look at his approval. There are people who approve of him that think he's a racist. Now, isn't that interesting? Isn't that really, really funny? That number will grow. Not because people will break the conditioning that they're being given by the legacy media and thinking that Trump is bigoted, which he's not, but they think that. They've got cognitive dissonance. You confront them with evidence that every reason possible for him to be labeled a bigot is actually objectively wrong, and they'll still say, well, you're just a bigot enabler or something. You're a Nazi. It's very funny. You become a Nazi simply by tacitly backing Trump on any issue, even if it's only one issue. I've seen people who are extremely liberal do this, and they still get called a racist. That's not going to happen, but his approval will rise. There's no ceiling on a person's approval. He's probably got a floor of approval, though. What the legacy media has done is convince about a third of Americans that Trump is constantly persecuted and put upon, and that if he does make a mistake, it's not even his fault, which, by the way, is a dangerous line to sort of get to. It could be a problem. I don't think Trump is authoritarian. Like, what was it? Cory Booker at the debate. Oh, he's acting more like an authoritarian than he is the leader of the Western world. You keep using this term, and yet Trump is the one trying not to censor things, not to tell people what they can and cannot believe in, not disarm people, not take more of their money. That is not an authoritarian position to take. There's no prison reform. There's nothing authoritarian about the platform that he has constructed or about the things that he has done. A person has to be ignorant of what authoritarianism means and simply be a left-wing partisan who thinks the fact that Trump said Jesus once means he's an authoritarian in order to construe it that way. And I was an anti-Bush, never Republican sort of person not that long ago in human history. I'm telling you that Donald Trump is not far-right. He's not a bigot. He's essentially a business Democrat who has managed to rock the boat enough to get the other business Democrats to enact an elaborate propaganda scheme against him to make people think that he's things that he clearly, historically, provably, objectively is not. One of those things is a racist. Another of those things is a Reaganite with regards to trickle-down economics. He didn't enact trickle-down. He gave people a wide-reaching middle-class and self-employed tax cut. The shaving off of the tax rate that he did even for self-employment is a huge benefit to someone like me. To all of you American content creators, if you're somewhere in the upper reach of the working class in income from self-employed means to somewhere in the upper middle class, you got a tax cut. That's simply the way that it is. There's no particular way that could be construed that you would lose that. There's no possible way that you paid more. I had some people say, well, I ended up paying more at the end of the year. And you ask them what they mean, and it's like, well, my tax return was smaller. Yeah, because you paid less into the system, of course it's going to be smaller. So what, the government gives you less of other people's money, and that is a tax increase? You're not paying any taxes. You pay a small amount per, per week or per month or whatever into the system. You're getting all of that plus more back. You have a negative tax rate. You don't pay any taxes. Again, I'm not saying, well, you're a horrible person, you're poor. No, that's the way the system works. It's fine, but you didn't get a tax increase. And there are a lot of Americans in that boat. It's like, what, 15, 20% of Americans are in that boat? Maybe more. Maybe I'm being an optimist here. Maybe it's a third. Or even more. Maybe it's 40%. I don't exactly know because the government keeps fucking around with the numbers. What I do know is that Trump's not a racist, but he could literally lick the floor of a Harlem basketball stadium and they'd still call him a racist. He could hang out with the Harlem Globetrotters and lick them top to bottom like lollipops, and they'd still consider him deeply xenophobic and bigoted. And that's basically what it boils down to. That's about all. Peace out.